Well, thank you again, and greetings to you. I hope that you had some good rest. Before we even begin today's message, I want to thank particularly our Korean brothers and sisters. They have done an excellent job. Every time I come to South Korea and interact with my brothers and sisters, I really learn something from them, and that is their generosity and their kindness and gentleness. And really, they are serving us. There's much work going on, and they did it behind the scene. I want to thank them again. Now, today we come to the second part of my talk, the second talk. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, the theme of this year's conference is Building God's Kingdom Amongst the Broken. Yesterday we covered chapter 1 and 2, Heart with the Broken, the restoration of God's people. Now today we will cover chapter 3 and 4, Hope to the Broken, the journey of God's people. And I said it yesterday already, I say it again, that I thank the Lord, to be able to attend this conference. I really am so excited to see so many brothers and sisters. As I was told yesterday by Dr. Peter, there are people from more than 120 countries. And tomorrow you'll be seeing more at the ICC. It's such a joy to learn together. Now, some of you may or may not know, I'm a Chinese from Hong Kong. My parents are from China. Now, in my culture, probably in your culture, in many of your culture as well, traditionally, parents love their children to be in 3 professions. You probably can guess what they are. Number 1, doctors. Number 2, lawyers. Number 3, engineers. Is that true? I don't know. What about your culture? Being doctor is top on the list because people think that you are very smart. They think that you are knowledgeable, trustworthy, and for some, they may think that you're also wealthy. Now, but the longer I have been a doctor, I realize that I do have a serious problem. I don't know what about you, but probably that is true for you as well. I realize that the longer I've been in the role as a doctor, I realize that I am or might not be a very good team player because we rely on our own judgment, rely on our own knowledge, skills. We tend not to depend on others very much. It's very easy for me to become proud because I know what I'm doing. And that's why when we come to chapter 3 and 4, it is so relevant to us today as we see in chapter 3 a strong team working together for a common goal, for a common vision. So I want to begin with this concept, the beauty of teamwork. I don't know whether you are a good team player or not, but certainly for me, I need to learn or unlearn certain bad habits and relearn the importance of teamwork. Now, before we even kind of study what lessons we can learn from chapter 3 and 4, please do bear with me about one thing, and that is that in chapter 3, we have to go through some details of a rather long list of names of all the gates and all the names of the people who did the repair. It's a long list of names. So a lot of you, probably a lot of us, including myself, we don't enjoy reading chapter 3 and 4. Because all the names, what does that mean? Now, just bear with me. Altogether, there are 10 gates mentioned and 42 sections of the wall being mentioned. And you feel that, it's really hard to go through the names. Let me just name some of them. The Sheep Gate, the Fish Gate, the Old Gate, the Valley Gate, the Dung Gate, and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you read the map, you notice that the repair of the wall begins at the top, that is in the north, the Sheep Gate in the north, proceeding in the repair in a counterclockwise position. Altogether, not very long, actually 2.5 miles only, but covering 220 acres. Now, if you read the chapter very carefully, you notice that different sections require different kinds of manpower. For example, I'll give you an example. The western wall, particularly in the south, require less people. There is only 1 crew. On the other hand, the eastern part require twice as many people as the western side. Therefore, so careful planning is very, very important as we do God's work. Now, we will continue. And of course, to begin with, Nehemiah assigned, first of all, Eliashib, that is the high priest, to went to work and rebuild the sheep gate. And then the next section, the men of Jericho went to repair. And then the next section, Zakah, and then the fish gate rebuilt by the sons of Hassenaah. Now, this list goes on for the next 28 verses. I don't know when you read this chapter, you do your morning devotions, whether you kind of quickly flip to the next chapter. You know, all the names, it's a bit you feel that it's a bit boring. Now, but it's important because some of the works are less appealing than others. I don't know whether it struck you when you read the word in verse 14, dung gate, smelly place, where they throw the rubbish. The dung gate is where they throw the rubbish, right? So I don't think I'm the one that would enjoy repairing the wall of the dung gate. It's really, really smelly, right? Not very, very attractive. So there were workers of all kinds. Now, I want to go through this list in a bit more detail to understand what that team looks like, because it's important to study. We mentioned a team. What is a team? What does a team looks like? First of all, Eliashib, he's a high priest and his fellow priests. They are spiritual leaders. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100. That is mentioned verse 1 and 2. Then the professionals. Who are they? They are the business people, goldsmiths and perfume makers, right? Not the spiritual leaders repair the walls. The professionals, business, those in a business. And then families. Interesting, it says here, Shalom, ruler of a half district of Jerusalem, with the help of his daughters. I'm just guessing here, probably he does not have any sons. So all the women, the daughters went to work with the father. Families were involved. But also, officials were involved. Raphael, son of Hur, ruler of a half district of Jerusalem. They are administrative leaders or civil servants, right? And then servants. These are temple servants, and they normally help out with the religious duties. And so they were also involved. And then individuals, no, not families, but individuals. Two names were mentioned in verse 24, Binui, and verse 25, Palau. Now, why do I go through the list here, if you read the Bible? As we see men and women, people of different strata of society, individuals and officials, people in high and low positions, all were involved. Now, as I read through this list, one key phrase struck me, and there's one very important key phrase, and that is in verse 6. Now, this is the most important. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, and for the people work with all their heart. It's just a wonderful description. There is unity here. Now, they are from different backgrounds, different professions. Not all are doctors. High and low, educated, uneducated, influential, people without much power, and yet all were serving together. And that's what God is looking for among God's people. Not only those who are educated, not only those who are doctors. Now, when I was a junior medical doctor in Hong Kong, I was working in Hong Kong for a number of years in the ICU. And I had the joy of going for short-term mission every year, medical mission trips, to North Thailand. How many of you are from Thailand here? Not very few, not many, right? Thailand. Now, I was working in the mountainous area in the Golden Triangle area. You know the Golden Triangle? The border of Thailand, Cambodia, and China. And for a few weeks, we were there doing medical work, providing medical care for the local people, the indigenous mountainous people, the Lahu, the Shan, the Karan, the Lisu people. And daytime, we did medical work. Nighttime, we have what we call evangelistic meetings. Doctors will share their testimony, how we became Christians. And so people came to know the Lord. So we had that for a few weeks. It was very, very special. But I learned one thing. In a team, not all are medical doctors. Actually, not all are health professionals. Some of them actually had not even gone to universities. Some receive very little education. Some are local people. Now, for those few weeks, we lived together under one roof. Sometimes we go to a local church in a little hut. We all sleep under one roof. Men in one hut, the women in the other hut. And we slept on the floors. And one time I was bitten by a spider. And my whole foot got swollen, got infected. The whole team looked after me, And I still remember, and also the brothers, we did not have our own shower rooms. But we do have wells. So the brothers help each other by pouring water over our bodies, Public shower. And we share each other's shampoos and soaps. A lot of fun together. But during the few weeks or every year, I learned one thing: to honor one another above myself. That was what the Bible is teaching me. And to practice that, to honor one another above myself. Now, we've just gone through very quickly the list in chapter 3, the long list of names and the gates and the names of people. Now, what lesson can we learn from this long list of names? I want to mention a few. First, leading the way by example. Now, important here in chapter 3, verse 1, Eliashib is the high priest. It was very fitting the high priest should set the example. Now, he did not set himself above the others, but was willing to get his hands dirty. I told you I worked in ICU for a number of years in Hong Kong, and then when I was in Pakistan, I also served as an ICU doctor, right? And in that ICU, only one ventilator. Actually, of course, in Hong Kong, plenty. We got 20, 30 ventilators, but only one ventilator, so it's really quite something. Donated from Switzerland. I just met a sister yesterday here from Switzerland in the front, right? And wonderful. But one day, the ventilator broke down. No more ventilator in ICU. So that was really tough. So I didn't know what to do. I was in charge of the ICU. So I called the engineer and said, do you have a manual, the handbook for this ventilator? We want to see whether we can repair it. He said, I've never seen the manual. I said, can you please go and look? So after half an hour, he came to me and said, I found the manual, never seen the manual before. So he and I read the manual together and tried to find out what's wrong with the ventilator. And finally, we came to the conclusion that maybe there's a tube that needs some repair work. It was leaking somewhere. And so we did the repair, or we tried to, and the ventilator worked again. It was such a joy, and that ventilator worked for another 7 years. It was really, really wonderful. But this engineer said this to me. He said, Dr. Patrick, we never expect the doctor to get his hands dirty on the machine just, with me, working with me, who is not a doctor. And I was deeply encouraged by what he said. I learned to get to work with others. Let us solve the problems together. And that is leading the way by example. Secondly, what I learned is watch out for pride and prejudice. You notice here in verse 5, the next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. The word noble is very, very interesting. In the original language, in Hebrew, it means the exalted one, the majestic ones. Meaning this, they think they are higher than the other people. These aristocrats, they disdained manual labor, and they would not put their shoulder to the work. And they see themselves higher than the others. They might think of themselves, why do I need to work to do such manual labor? These work belong to the servants. Only the servants will repair the work, not me. And I still remember when we were in Pakistan, my pastor from Hong Kong came to visit me. Now, I live in Karachi, the city. It's a very dusty area, very windy, dusty, because we're close to the desert. You could mop the floor in the morning, by the afternoon it's all filled with dust again. As I know many of you may experience that, I still remember every night my pastor would roll up his sleeve and trousers and mop the floor for us. Every day when he was there visiting us for 2 weeks, every day, he mopped the floor. And really, really encouraged me. So may we serve not just with skills and knowledge, but with humility and compassion as well. Third, families serving together. I mentioned to you already. And, Shalom, ruler of a half-district of Jerusalem, repaired the nick section with the help of his daughters. Families serving together. I still remember my daughter, for the first 6-7 years of her life, she was in Pakistan with us. Now, I didn't tell you this story. Maybe today I can share with you. When we decided to go to the mission field, my father, who was not a Christian at that time, was very angry with me. I still remember one time during a festival time in Chinese culture, there is the Moon Autumn Festival, right? The Autumn Festival. And usually we have friends and families, relatives all come together for a big meal. So there were many, many family members who were there. I still remember during dinner time, my father stood up and told everybody. He said, from today onward, my son will not call me father anymore. My son, I have one son less because he is going to what he called mission work. That was quite a traumatic experience for me before we went to the mission field, because my father's kind of disowned me and said, I have one son less now. He's going to mission work. And we went there for four years. It was really painful for me. I was not able to say goodbye to my dad. When I returned after 4 years for sabbatical, just for a few months, because my daughter was to be born, and of course my daughter was born, my parents were very happy, but also very sad, because they knew within 2 months we are going back to the mission field. So we were only home for about 2.5 months, 3 months. My daughter was born. I still remember when my dad, in the Chinese culture, when the baby is 1 month old, there's a celebration, what we call 1 month, full month celebration. You celebrate when a baby is 1 month old. So I still remember my dad took us out for dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration, but also I noticed that they were feeling a bit sad because within a week, we would be leaving for the mission field again. I still remember at dinner time, at the end of the dinner, there was still some food on the table. And this restaurant is very famous for roast duck. Those of you who are from Hong Kong, you know where this place is. Roast duck in Hong Kong. And my dad said this, finish all the food on the plate, I said, no, Dad, I'm very full. I never forget what he said to me. He said, son, I bet there is no roast duck in the mission field. Now, just listen very carefully. He's not concerned about roast duck. He's not concerned about the food. What he's saying is that I still care for you. I don't understand what you're doing, why you go to the mission field, but I still care. At that moment, at that point, I felt God was putting a Band-Aid on my bleeding wound, as if the bleeding stopped. Because for 4 years, I never say goodbye to my dad. And I knew that my father still loved me. And that was so amazing. Families serving together. Now I must go to the second point. First point was hope for the broken, the beauty of teamwork. Second is clearing roadblocks and rubble. Because you notice here, the people said the strength of the laborers is giving out. There is so much rubble and we cannot rebuild the wall. The amount of work can be overwhelming. Now, but the major obstacle may not be the amount of work, but actually opposition. Because you notice in chapter 5, a number of people were mentioned in terms of opposition. Sanballat, and then there were ancient enemies, foes of Israel, Arabs, Ammonites, Ashdodites. Now, it was very obvious that these people were against the work. It says here, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem openly expressed their disapproval. Are you rebelling against the king? They kind of mocked and ridiculed them. Now, this is not to say that all opposition we encounter is satanic. But in Nehemiah's case, we are dealing with evil hatred. Suddenly there's evil, there's hatred going on. But Nehemiah's response is very appropriate. He said, the God of heaven will give us success. His hope is in God, And Nehemiah's closing words are tough. You have no share in Jerusalem. The issues are very clear. Nehemiah was not soft in facing the evil attacks. He remained steadfast, trusting God who called him. Now, so far, this is all from chapter 2, but when we come to chapter 4, the direct verbal attack was even more severe. And in chapter 4, the opposition was even worse. What are these people Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish that in a day? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones. What is the enemy doing? It's psychological warfare, right? Now, I want to go through this in a bit more detail, more carefully. How did the enemy attack Nehemiah? And actually, it happens to us as well. First, what did the enemy do? Number one is attack our self-image. Those feeble Jews. The enemy will attack our self-image, telling us that we are feeble and have no use. I still remember before we went to the mission field, we had to go through mission training in the mission, in OMF, in Singapore for all the new missionaries. I still remember that's what they call orientation course for missionaries. The very first night during the orientation course, I had a terrible dream. I dreamt that my house was on fire, and Jenny, my wife, was trapped inside the house. I could not go and save her. And then I heard a voice mocking me. This voice said, you think you can save the people you went to the mission field and share the gospel and save them with the gospel? You see, you cannot even save your wife. And I woke up with this terrible feeling. I can't even save my wife. I know the enemy wanted to destroy my self-image, telling me I'm no good. That's what the enemy does. Telling you are no good, you're of no use, attack our self-image. But more than that, the enemy attacks our capability. Will they restore the wall? Do you think you have the capacity to do it? Do you know what you're doing? Actually, before we even start the work, the enemy already is telling you that you will fail. The enemy will tell you, you will fail, you will not succeed. That's what the enemy does. But there's a third thing. The enemy attacks our spirituality as well. Will they offer sacrifices? What does that mean? They ridicule their faith in God. Do you think by praying the walls will get stronger? Will your sacrifice do you any good? They challenge our spirituality. Fourth is attacked by ridicule. What you do is totally useless. Can they bring the stones back to life from those heap of rubble, burn as they are? Chapter 4, verse 2. Now, Sanballat, the enemy, implied that the stones were useless and their labor was in vain. Now, anytime we engage in God's work, we are likely to encounter what I call poison arrows shooting at us. You experience those poison arrows. You are no good. You can't do it. You will fail. And all these words of ridicule and lies, deception. And I would like to share something with you. Many of you could be very confident, experienced doctors. Some of you are medical students, but many are doctors sitting here. I believe I've seen many. Even the most confident, experienced doctor will face the haunting experience of inferiority. I'm sure you have experienced that as we seek to serve God. Even if you are the most experienced, confident doctor, there will be moments in you when you feel inferior. But we learn from Nehemiah that while facing threats, humiliation, deception, and ridicule, he remained a man of prayer. There was no retaliation. He did not retaliate, but pour his heart to God. He poured out his anger before the Lord. Was he angry? Of course he was angry. He was ridiculed. He was angry. But Nehemiah cleared the roadblocks and rubble by prayer. How did he pray? He said, "Hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their heads." And then the people worked with all their heart. Was he angry? Yes, he was angry. The Bible didn't hide the fact that he was angry. He was upset. But the anger did not generate retaliation. As a matter of fact, it was channeled into energy. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height. Anger does not mean revenge. Rather, it can unleash creativity, fuel ambition, and feed determination. Now, before I finish this particular section, I want to say something like this. And I'm learning from this chapter here. Do not allow the enemy to define who you are. Only God defines who you are. The enemy will tell you you are no good, and Satan will attack your self-image, challenge your capabilities, doubt your spirituality, and dispute your usefulness. All these are deceptions. Let us not give Satan a foothold. We need to discipline ourselves to listen to God's voice, not Satan's voice. Let us be sensitive to the prompting of the Holy Spirit. And I always liked Samuel's prayer as a young boy. You know how in 1 Samuel chapter 3, what did Samuel say? "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." I really like this in 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 10. You know, he was just a young boy. "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." That was the young Samuel's prayer. Now, so far I've covered two aspects. Hope for the broken, the beauty of teamwork. Second, hope for the broken, clearing roadblocks and rubble. Now I come to the final point, the third point, and that is hope for the broken, diligence and steadfastness. Now, I mentioned Hudson Taylor yesterday. Hudson Taylor was the man who founded the China Inland Mission. And the leader of the China Inland Mission once said, "There are 3 stages in every great work of God. First, it is impossible. Second, it is difficult. Third, it is done." Now, what does that mean? Doing God's work, labor and sweats are involved. Now, you notice in chapter 4, even though facing threats and difficulties, Nehemiah worked hard and the people worked hard. We continue to work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars came out. That was hard work, right? "Neither I, nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes." So there was hard work. And I want to say this. Spirituality is no substitute for sweat. Prayer may move mountains, but prayer and elbow grease are wonderful allies. Spirituality and sweat are not rivals, but are always together. Some people say, "I just pray and the work will be done." No, that's not enough. You pray, but you also work hard, right? It's very, very important. This is what happened to Nehemiah. There is a lot of prayer, but also hard work as well. Actually, if you read chapter 4, if you read that very carefully, the word work is mentioned multiple times. I just quote some of it here. Verse 6, "We rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half the height, and the people worked with all their hearts." Verse 16, "Half of my men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears and shields." Verse 21, "So we continued to work with half the men holding spears," and so on and so forth. You can see here in chapter 4, multiple times, this word work is mentioned. The people of God were in a spiritual battle, yes, but they worked hard, they remained alert, they worked hard, and were ready to be ready for battle. Now, I appreciate, some of you may know Dr. John White from Canada, who is a psychiatrist. He wrote many books. This is how he commented on Nehemiah. He says, their posture towards attack was defensive, but towards the work was aggressive. Let me say that again. Their posture towards the attack was defensive, but towards the work was aggressive. Now, what did he mean by that, Dr. John White? What he meant was by aggressive meaning is hard work and diligence. You remember what Paul said in his letter to the Corinthian church. He says, by the grace of God, I am who I am. By the grace of God. And yet, I work harder than all of them. He was not ashamed to tell people that, he worked very hard. And you can read here in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not abandoned. Struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus might be revealed in our body. There is hard work. Now, I'm not asking all of us to be workaholics, right? Hard work doesn't mean being a workaholic. You know why? Because workaholics are driven by self-ambition. We want to prove ourselves. I'm not asking us to prove ourselves. But what I'm asking us is to make the best use of our time as instructed by Paul in Ephesians chapter 5. He said, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Hours and days will surely pass, but we can direct them purposefully and productively. We often say we don't have enough time, but I think our problem is not too little time, but rather making the best use of time that we have. Now, procrastination is one of evil's most potent weapons for preventing us from doing God's work. I'm not sure whether you are some type, who like to procrastinate. I think most doctors are not. They don't tend to procrastinate. But has the Lord been urging us to do something for Him? And have we been procrastinating and never acted on it? Maybe at this conference, the Lord is urging you, you promised you would do this for God, but you procrastinated. You never did it. As James, the book of James says this, faith without deed is dead. Let your deeds support your faith. Oh, there should be one more page. The last page is missing. Never mind. Let me conclude. One page is missing from my PowerPoint. Nehemiah chapter 3 and 4 are about the journey of God's people. Of course, we cover that, the journey of rebuilding. But the rebuilding is not just rebuilding infrastructure. It's not hardware. But rebuilding God's people. That is our ultimate goal. As doctors, we're not just healing people physically, but we're rebuilding broken people. It is an impossible task. And God has called us all to be involved, a teamwork. We need one another. Certainly we will face obstacles, rubble, and opposition. And let us be reminded again, the enemy, the evil one, will attack your self-image, challenge your capabilities, doubt your spirituality, and dispute your usefulness. But we need to listen to God's voice, not the evil one. There will be hard work and sweats, but spirituality and hard work are not rivals, for both honor God. Let us make the best use of our time for His kingdom as we bring hope to a broken world. Amen.